Welcome to Informed Dissent. I'm Eliza Mondegreen, and I'm here with Jamie Reed.
Hi, welcome. We are going to be recording an episode today about strange bedfellows. I'd like to welcome our co-hosts in this endeavor.
Oh, hi, I'm Lisa Selin Davis.
Hi, I'm Cori.
And for those of you who are only listening, we need to explain that Cori and Jamie and Lisa are all being strange bedfellows together.
We happened
in New York
in a hotel room, and so we are not actually sharing a bed other than for sitting on one for this podcast. And
we're explain that.
I mean,
I feel like I did.
Unless that's something that our paid subscribers want us to do.
And we're really sad that Eliza's not here in the bed with us. And Ben is still working on his book.
Yeah, and Ben is still working on his book. So we will welcome him back next week if there's anything left of him.
Or us.
Or us.
Okay. So
what's a strange bedfellow?
So strange bedfellows. We wanted to talk this week about some of the very diverse people who have all come together under the umbrella of thinking that something is going wrong around gender. And we have all kind of come from different places and met a lot of very different people, some of whom we might not have expected to spend so much time with and befriend. And that was what we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, I think we should also get into this idea of bipartisanship as a form of treason and moral purity, and people getting mad at you when you even talk to, let alone work with someone from a different background or a different belief system. So one of the things that's interesting about this movement that we've all struggled to communicate that it shouldn't be framed as left-right. It's not just conservative Christians who are bigots. And by the way, that's not a fair assessment of conservative Christians anyway, but versus progressive people, good-hearted progressive people. And there are a lot of reasons that it's been really difficult to communicate that. The main one being that the primary vehicles to communicate to liberals won't help us deliver that message. So when almost anytime the liberal media is covering the issue, they frame it that way, that the objections come from the right instead of there are a bunch of lesbians, gays, bisexuals.
And by the way, the nature of the right-wing objections are not necessarily what they're being characterized as either. Yeah.
Right. And then they're not necessarily moral or lifestyle objections. We could talk about what they are. But I guess one thing that's important to talk about is why did these sides come together? Why has the right welcomed the voices of everyone from libertarian transsexuals to lefty feminists?
Who's a lefty feminist? Is that you?
I guess that was me.
Okay.
Welcomed.
What are you? Weren't you a lefty feminist?
Ooh, I think we should talk about
Once Upon a Time
feminism too.
Oh, I'm defining. Well, we have to be careful for people watching to not. We're on a bed. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I won't jump. As I jump.
I'm not talking.
Only jump for effect.
I'm not talking about this very recent third wave feminism in which we redefined what a woman is. I'm talking about the long history of feminism as being concerned with women's rights. So I consider any women concerned about their sex-based rights to be part of feminist movements.
Then sure, I'm a feminist.
Right. And you probably would have thought of yourself as one.
Absolutely.
Before
absolutely
you got in bed with us. So Cori, sorry, can you talk a little bit about these these people coming together, the strange bedfellows of the right and all of us?
Sort of. So I can at least give my perspective.
Okay.
You said something that I thought was took me off a little bit, which is like, oh, the right was so welcoming of us. But I don't think that was really the direction. I think it's sort of like the car ended up in the ditch and everybody kept pulling over to help pull it out of the ditch. So it's really organic. It's emergent behavior. There's no central coordination happening. And the people who observe the problem, they observe that the car is in the ditch. So many people, both from the left and right, have just driven past and ignored that there's a problem happening. But there's so many people now that are stopping. They're not concerned, first of all, about, oh, do I like the person who's in trouble? They have an instinct that there's something wrong, and they're putting aside their tribal affiliations to try to help. So for the concerns that I've been associated with related to legislation in Ohio and Indiana and Texas, and some of the legal proceedings, such as in Alabama, it's not a matter of what your politics are. The matter is that you see that there is this problem, especially with respect to children being harmed by this form of medical conversion therapy. And people, it offends people's core moral sensibilities, which, frankly, in my opinion, most of the people on the left and the right in this country have the same underlying moral framework. It's just how it's expressed is sort of how it comes out in the left or right. But we're seeing this, and we're saying at a fundamental level, something really wrong is happening here. And even though we would not end up working on the same types of political campaigns together normally, we nevertheless have to pull together, because otherwise the car's not going to come out of the ditch. We all have to help do this together. That's my perspective.
I like your analogy. I think I would elevate the car to a school bus full of vulnerable young people, and it's also on fire.
The bus is on fire?
Yeah.
We don't have to pull it out of the ditch then.
No, I just think that the urgency is yes, but I also agree so many people have just driven by and kept going. Like, that's not my problem.
That's not my problem.
Yeah.
Somebody else will fix. I don't have the resources to fix that.
Yeah.
I can't do it by myself, so I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
Eliza, when did you encounter a politically diverse kind of coalition of people working on it, and who are the people you're surprised that you interact with? Or
that's a good question. I think when I was getting into this in 2016, 2017, the first place that I found, and I know this was something we wanted to talk about today, was radical feminists who were speaking out, and at the time seemed like the only ones who were. You kind of noticed that the bus was in the ditch, on fire. So that was really kind of my inroads. And when I first started like writing a little bit publicly about the issue, it was definitely from a feminist perspective, and the focus was on sex-based rights. And then as I did more and more research, my focus kind of shifted toward the medical side and the online social contagion side. But I remember before I got involved, my first encounter with the idea that there were people other than me who thought that maybe something wasn't quite right, was that the Women's Liberation Front had put together a meeting with the Heritage Foundation. I think that was in maybe 2015. Was it later?
2018, I think.
There was something that was earlier than that. That was like, and I remember the thought that but maybe I'm mixing things up in my head.
Started with some seed money from ADF.
Okay, that could be it. I remember there was some kind of alliance between radical feminists and between groups on what I at the time certainly would have thought of as the very far right, and maybe have made some adjustments for some of those groups since then. And my first thought was, I'm reading along, I'm agreeing with everything that the radical feminists are saying about gender. And then I get to the part with, whatever group it was, if it was ADF or it was Heritage Foundation. And I was just like, oh, but those are some bad bedfellows. So I must still be wrong. And there was a big part of me that was still prepared. Like when your entire social group and your professional cohort are all on board with something, it's very easy to think I'm just missing something, and to think that for years and years and years. And I am not super proud to admit that like my encounter with, okay, conservatives are also really concerned about this, was to be like, okay, maybe I really am wrong about this. And that took a little while to get over. But that was genuinely my reaction at that time. But I couldn't find anything that I disagreed with that was being said in that article that, the radical feminists were saying, or why they were saying that they were working with these groups. It was like, I really do agree with all those things. I think all of those things are true. And so it has been an interesting process to really try to break up with some of the mindsets that I certainly had 10 years ago, and deal with one of the things that I see among a lot of my fellow progressives is this kind of smothered intuition. People feel like something's wrong, and then they are told in so many ways, it's not your place to judge. Your allyship requires you to submit your independent judgment to these marginalized people. And they really tamp down their real feelings of alarm at what they see happening, and take those feelings of alarm to mean that they're a bad person who isn't sufficiently informed. And that was definitely a process that I have gone through over the last 10 years.
I love the phrase smothered intuition. And your story reminded me of a couple of times where before I was really speaking out, and I would read something and say, wow, this is great. And I'd show it to someone and they'd say, oh, but that's a right-wing news source. And then then you had to put it away completely. And one of the things that I often tell people is, if you really want to understand this issue, you have to have an omnivorous news diet. You have got to read with an open mind, like right-wing media, the same media that may have fed you a lot of mis or disinformation about January 6th or all kinds of things. And now it's incumbent upon all of us to kind of be independent journalists and figure out how to pick out the truth, because both sides are compromised. And it took me both left and right-wing media are compromised in terms of like unable have some loyalty to something that interferes with them doing honest, good reporting. And
there's always a spin.
I mean, like, so right-wing media can't be critical of Trump, and and left-wing media can't be critical of race, gender, or COVID. And so you have to, it's very difficult to be properly informed. And if you're a liberal, you have to put away right equals bad. And in my limited experience, people on the right are better at that than people on the left. That every time I've hung out or participated in events that are hosted or put on by right-wing organizations, which I have because I want them to hear me, and I always show up as myself. People have been very welcoming, and I do. Whenever I meet people there, I always introduce myself as a like hairy armpitted feminist, child of hippies, etc. Which
we might have been comparing our our hairy armpits.
Oh, we're gonna lose
Maybe
every viewer slash listener.
20 minutes ago before we started recording.
I just grew up with a lot of messages about women's body hair. Anyway, that's for another time. My point is, all but James Lindsay have laughed at my way that I introduced myself.
How do you know he didn't laugh?
Because I introduced myself to him and he was sitting next to him, and he did not think it was funny.
Okay.
But I'm just finding I find more acceptance, and it's not just because we agree on this, because we probably don't agree on much else, and that seems to be fine. And I wonder why it's so difficult for anybody in the world that we're all surrounded by outside this hotel to give that same leeway. Why can't we disagree on we agree on most other things?
Yeah, that's been my experience too, that it's much easier to work with conservatives issue by issue. And I'm not really sure why that is. And I wonder if part of it is, I mean, those of us who are on the left side of the spectrum, did we just get so used to dominating like all of the popular culture and having people endorse our views and endorse them as a package, and conservatives kind of being outs on the outs in that way had to be more, pick and choose and find small areas of agreement?
Yeah, I have few doubts. Like, we're having a cultural change right now.
Yes.
And it just changed its moderation policy to allow people to be more critical of left-friendly movements. Like, there's a lot of cultural change happening.
Mm-hmm.
If it happens that conservative is cool again, and the conservatives are the ones who are setting the culture again, sort of what happened for a while after Bill Clinton's presidency and the Monica Lewinsky affair, conservatives sort of had a cultural rebound for a little while.
Were they cool? I don't remember this.
I don't remember them.
I mean,
Gingrich being cool.
I mean, for a while, the Newt Gingrich's Congress was sort of like the only the first functioning Congress in a while, right? So there was even maybe a little bit of, like, at any rate.
You're really revealing your definition of cool.
Yeah.
Cori's right. That
let me finish.
Okay. Yeah.
My point is that if they come and have that sort of influence again, that cultural legitimacy, I have no doubt that they'll be like, oh, we don't need you anymore. We don't need to pair up with you and meet you in your hotel rooms and get into bed with you and then not tell anybody that we had sex with you. Like, that's not happening.
Hello scenario.
No, not in this one.
Okay.
No, not in this one, obviously. I'm talking about anyway. Like, without any doubt, that's not gonna. They're like the people who are liberal, who have nothing to add to get that momentum to get an issue passed, won't have any value anymore. It's just going to be like what the left is right now, which is we have the influence, we have the cultural legitimacy, we have our hands on the levers of power. We don't need to listen to anybody because we're in control. We don't have to. That bus can take care of itself. We don't have to stop and take care of it.
So the underdog is the welcoming party.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything innately more open-minded about conservatives. I think there's something more innately open-minded about whichever movement is out of power.
I think we will find out. We will find out if all of the kind of right-wing Christian types that we've talked to, and I've interviewed a lot of people because I'm trying to tell this story in my book of the Strange Bedfellows. We'll see if we've made any lasting impression on them, because many of them had never met people like us, and I had not really met people like them. And I'm curious if they will. Many of them seem to be fine with gay people, even if they don't say it out loud. And I'm curious if they'll just like keep going Project 2025 kind of vision of the world and just use us until they don't need us, or if there is some kind of little bit of opening that will remain. But I do think that conservative young people are going to get cooler. And I tried to get this girl to write this op-ed for me, and I think she has trouble finishing things, so she didn't do it. But I think I'll just help her, or I'll interview her next week or something. She's a young sister. She's from Brooklyn. She's from liberal Brooklyn. You know, would have gone on in this bubble forever had she not been caught up in gender stuff and had a very hard time, and then come out of it and gone full turf. And then she just went to college this fall, and she joined the Young Republicans Club at college. She voted in her first election in November. She voted for Trump. And I asked her how things were among the Young Republicans. And she said, they are so functional and they are so positive. They have, their vision of the world is not nihilistic. It gives her hope. Whereas if you're joining some kind of lefty group that's all like, we're being persecuted and there are 482 anti-trans laws and it's an emergency and your nervous system is activated all the time and you're being convinced that you're persecuted and you're not okay. And for her, that's the way she grew up. And then she entered this realm of like, we're good, we're strong, we can do it, we can handle stuff. And I can definitely see that becoming the cooler, kind of hipper thing, hip young conservatives. And maybe they'll be a little bit more like old-fashioned conservatives and not, I don't even know what old-fashioned conservatives mean, but a little less on the kind of cultural issue and more on, I don't know. They used to say they were for fiscal responsibility, but I never saw that in action. But that's what I think might happen. And then the lefty kind of trans identified cohort throwing tomato soup on Van Goghs to stop climate change, that they will be
that's not cool.
Incredibly uncool.
Yeah, and I think Cori's right that we're living through a much broader political realignment, and we don't even really know how things like right now we're still trying to plug things into like a conservative, progressive framework, and those just may not be the most salient ways that people are organizing themselves. Like the meanings of both of those seem to be changing so much that I guess we'll see what happens with that. But that's really interesting to think about the like, okay, these groups are more functional and positive because those are really the last things that you would say about certain political spaces that some of us have come out of.
I'm personally very hopeful and positive that we are going to be increasing the number of states. That's great.
The number of states?
Yes.
Yeah. You mean like Puerto Rico's?
No, Greenland and Canada.
Canada.
We're going to get Greenland and Canada.
Yeah,
I think Puerto Rico should be a state and they should be represented. Guam.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Greenland is definitely going to make a big tip. I have big plans for Greenland, but let's save that for.
Yeah, let's save that. Yeah.
I guess we could
the next episode
for a minute to the objections to gender identity ideology, which we could define as the erasure of sex-based reality, right. that everyone has a gender identity that reveals itself or is excavated or discovered, and that is what makes you male or female or neither, or both, or
Yeah.
That in the 70s, Janice Raymond, a feminist named Janice Raymond, wrote a book called The Transsexual Empire. And then there was a transsexual recording engineer whose name I'm forgetting, but we'll put it in the show notes, Sandy Stone, who wrote a rebuttal called The Empire Strikes Back. And I did read both of those some years back. But Janice Raymond's book is a great introduction to the problems, because she knew this 40 years ago. Wait, that's 50 years ago. 50 years ago, she understood that self-identification was going to disrupt our society at a very basic level and harm women. But I think the right was very, very slow to get on board for a variety of reasons, including they didn't really want to touch it. It was odd, and they didn't think it would be popular. So really the objection begins with feminists, but like so many things, the women weren't able to call attention to it. The way
I really hate that characterization.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Say more.
So I've been having this frustration. Get in frame.
Yeah, I'm in the frame. I'm just feeling a little like.
You seem like you don't like them as much as they like each other.
So I'm trying to de-thruple myself.
So I agree with you completely that Janice Raymond was a visionary and saw where all of this. I don't think that because Janice Raymond is a woman, that all women or all feminists get credit for seeing this problem, because you could just point to, for everyone Janice Raymond, I think you could probably name 2 or 3 academic feminists who helped perpetuate it. So I am totally for giving Janice Raymond the credit, but I am not for saying, well, women saw this problem way before, because it doesn't work like that.
Well, there is, I graduated from college in the early 90s, and I basically missed third wave feminism. Yeah. I didn't really, I had no idea that there was a movement of trans inclusive feminism that began in the 90s, because I got my degree in experimental feminist video, which, as we all know, was definitely worth the price.
Wait, what did you really get your degree in?
This is experimental
neo-Marxist theory and experimental feminist video.
Yeah.
And now you're making them.
I just want to say that also I paid $0 for tuition, which I think was the right amount for that degree.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've read about third wave feminism since, and the need, it started, it didn't start, but part of what happened was post-operative transsexual women, males identifying as women, wanting to be included specifically at the Michigan Women's Music Festival at Mitch Fest, and starting this conversation about
all sorts of things.
Can you do that as an example?
Yes, but I think Sandy Stone was part of like a lesbian motorcycle club, for example.
Well, see, that sounds pretty cool. Anyway, yeah. So people wanting into the category of woman, and because of which we talked about either last week or a couple of weeks ago, that move toward intersectionality because of Kimberly Crenshaw's work on, it's not just your sex, it's your race, it's your class, and all of these ways that how you were oppressed is affected by the various categories you belong to, which again, like, some of that is important and worth considering. But whatever it turned into was woman is a feeling, and anyone can feel that feeling and claim womanhood, and then it became, until a couple days ago, Title IX. As far as I know, we're not doing a very good job at our news part of our podcast, but that was, states are now allowed to object to that. Is that the thing that just happened with Title IX? We don't know. We'll just cut this part out. Anyway, the point is,
we'll put it in the show notes.
That kind of self-ID into womanhood is now encoded in law and policy and in the public mind of the left. And that is the problem. And I think that the second wave feminists objecting to this could not have foreseen what the third wave feminists would push for. But I also think they probably had less power. I don't think that those women who pioneered those ideas are really the ones who got them institutionalized. How much power did those women people constantly talk about Judith Butler. Have you ever tried to read that book? It's impossible. I can't. So how much influence did Judith Butler actually have when her writing is so opaque? I mean, I just think other people took the ideas and ran. And I think trans women took the ideas and ran more than the women. And I guess that's what I mean by the women. These feminists had this idea, but I don't think anyone listened to them until someone else took it up.
Can I ask a question of you three, having been on the total other side?
Yeah.
Drinking the Kool-Aid and being in that world. It sounds like some of the early Strange Bedfellows were going way back, like 2015. You're talking about 2018, 2019. Has it shifted? So I think that the Republican Party doesn't come in early on.
I mean,
yeah,
they pivoted in 2015 the same way that the advocacy groups pivoted. Post gay marriage, the Republicans said, "Okay, we lost that. Let's move on to this other stuff." And so, and as we know, the left-wing advocacy group said, "Oh, we won, but we have an enormous mailing list and these big funders. What else can we do?" So in a way, both sides pivoted toward this issue. You'll hear in the right-wing media only that the right did that. But they only realized in the past few years that it was a very powerful wedge issue. And that became most apparent at the very end of the last election with the, I almost said the name of the mayoral candidate I just wrote about, but Harris is for they, them, and Trump is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had, and you can hear Trump at the rallies sometimes. He would say something about the economy and something that, you'd think would really get his base going. And then he'd say something about trans issues and they would go wild. So I don't think the Republicans realized what a gold mine this was, what we'd handed them, we the left. Kind of like, Clinton's, the semen stain on the blue dress was handed Gingrich and the, whatever it was called, the new contract with America, and to position themselves as with the moral arbiters of everything, because Clinton was diddling.
Isn't that why the left gets so angry with the Republicans, though? They think that the Republicans always saw this as the golden ticket wedge issue.
Yeah, but they didn't.
But
it didn't.
They picked it up before they knew the gold mine that they had. And did they pick it up because it was the right thing to do?
I mean, they didn't. I would say they didn't pick it up in a big way. Like, there was the bathroom bill in North Carolina, but there seemed to be a lot of reluctance from the Republican Party at the federal level and in a lot of states to touch the issue at all, because I think it was seen as, this will be another loser, like opposition to gay marriage. And there was a reluctance to be put in that position again. And so I really do think that the Democrats and the Republicans both kind of, their initial stance on trans issues was a hangover from the fight for marriage equality. that this is like gay marriage and not this is fundamentally different.
That is what I have heard from people on that side.
Yeah, there was tremendous backlash to that first North Carolina bathroom bill, if you remember, and backlash, right?
Yeah.
And so that wasn't a good look. And then it became, however, anyway, by last year, it was a very good look.
And then Rick DeSantis was like, F it, we're gonna do it here in Florida.
Ron
DeSantis, thank you.
That's another who the Rick was, but
Yeah, it's probably
that's right.
Rick Santorum.
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis was like, we're doing this in Florida. Hang on, kids, it's all go. And it turned out to be fine.
Right. Wasn't I just saying it would be so fascinating if someone could collect some data on numbers of trans identified kids, for instance, in Florida public schools where you're no longer allowed to teach this versus schools where it's heavily integrated into the curriculum. I mean, that would have been, that was an opportunity, I think, to, when it's banned in some places and really heavily pushed in another, it'd be so interesting to I mean, obviously you couldn't claim causation necessarily, but you could.
I wonder if we do have that.
Sorry, that just made me think, part of what is different about social contagion with this, as opposed to, it used to have to be that your social contagion was tied geographically. So it was, you could see these waves of all of the girls in one school having the Tourette's-like symptoms, or they'd all pass out, or it would have to be a level of closeness that I saw you and I picked it from you. But I think when you think about what happened in Florida, or when you have a state that says we can't teach this in school anymore, either that downstream effect is going to take a lot longer because they're still tied in socially. Their social media hasn't been changed. Their TikTok algorithm hasn't changed. So I think part of what you have to figure out is how much of the cultural driver is at that local level, or how much of that local level is just reinforcing the cultural driver that's coming from a larger algorithm.
That's why it'd be great to gather some data.
Yeah. And you can see maybe the Supreme Court will let us just ban TikTok in like half the states. And
natural experiment.
Then we can see,
you should ban TikTok in sanctuary states only.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Guys, we got it. We solved all the problems.
While we were talking, I had a thought about something that sort of bridges left and right.
Okay.
And two groups that may deserve some credit for creating these bedfellows. One would be Libs of TikTok, and the other one would be Gays Against Groomers, which both appeal to conservative audiences. And I know Gays Against Groomers is led by a lesbian woman. Is Chaya gay or bisexual?
I don't think so. The Libs of TikTok. She's
TikTok.
like a modern Orthodox Jew.
All right. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's sort of interesting too, right? So I think that between those two groups, there was so much communication of, here are some things that are really, really going badly in society that have to do with like this crazy gender stuff. And it wasn't really explicitly like conservative messaging around it. It's, in fact, it's sort of hip, the criticisms that happen around it. And I wonder if that's one of the things that brought more people on the right in to go, wow, this is really messed up. And the people who are telling us aren't the normal right-wing channels, but maybe like Gays Against Groomers. That's like, it's clearly not a heritage op, right?
Yeah. That'd be funny if we found out it was.
Well, that would be funny.
Yeah, so you're saying that the message, even if Gays Against Groomers is they are Republicans, or they don't, or not really, or it doesn't matter.
Well, I think they're
just
right coded,
but
they're right.
It's definitely like it's crossing the boundaries still.
And it's also not some giant institution. It's somebody started an organization, and somebody else started a like a Twitter feed.
Right.
And well, that sort of diversified and expanded the opposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of, I think, what's really important is to create this environment in which people can speak up. And so that created an environment maybe that allowed more people on the right or to the center or whatever the other directions are to speak up. It's still hard. I'm still getting notes from people saying, I can't say anything, but, and I've started to just write back, well, why can't you say anything now? Like what needs to happen for them to say something? And partly, yes, the New York Times needs to keep pivoting toward truth. I mean, we did see the headline about the Title IX ruling, and it said,
I tweeted it. I'm going to pull it up.
It said,
dun, dun, dun. Judge rejects Biden's Title IX rules, scrapping protections for trans students.
So they're still telling their readers that
that such a thing even exists as a trans student. What's a trans student?
Well, more importantly, that this Title IX was created for sex-based equity and to protect women in some way or create opportunities for women. And they're still not saying anything about women. They're still they're still telling people that it's about an injustice towards trans people.
Yes.
It would be nice if they would stop doing that, because you'd have a lot more people speaking up. And it would be nice if they ever looked at the proportion of comments when they write those articles, correcting them, lambasting them, imploring them for a different framing, and to the ratio of that to, you are reporting this correctly and there is only one valid side. But still hasn't happened yet. And again, that also, it remains to be seen what form Trump derangement syndrome takes.
Oh, round two.
I don't think it's going to be as bad, personally.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right too. I'm only wrong somewhere between 7 and 9% of the time.
So
I might be wrong about that, though.
Also, from kind of an outsider's perspective, so I fell out of the sky in February of 2023, and I still see a lot of tension in a different group of strange bedfellows in our kind of side or movement. So I've seen this tension pop up between, and please help me if I'm characterizing these groups as the wrong way, because again, I'm still kind of an outsider in some ways, but there is this radical feminism that seems to be opposed to gender nonconformity.
Would you run that from the beginning of the sentence again?
There seems to be this tension where I think that the rad femmes and whoever they're fighting with, they are expressing some kind of opposition to gender, and I there's not a better word to use right now, but gender nonconformity.
Right.
So I still see this that I think we're on the same side, but this argument about men can't wear a dress, or women can't appear in a way. And I see some strange bedfellow almost conflict between the gays and lesbians who express gender nonconformity. Am I shaking?
Yeah, I'm
shaking. Sorry, I'm using my hands too much. that maybe the radical feminists who are opposed to gender ideology also have some level of opposition to kind of a butch femme dynamic, or men being in dresses, or is that another kind of strange conflict that
are they in bed by themselves?
There's a lot to unpack there.
Are they in bed by themselves?
Okay, I guess I'm thinking about radical feminists, like, if it seems to me that term applies to a group with a very specific set of goals. They are against surrogacy.
Mhm.
They are pro-choice.
Okay.
They are anti-pornography.
Yes.
They are anti-gender identity stuff.
Mhm.
And there might be one other thing that
Anti-prostitution.
Anti-prostitution.
Okay.
And I cannot imagine those people being particularly concerned about masculine women or feminine men. And they may not like a man in a dress.
But what I have seen is them arguing that any of those things are performative of gender. And that I almost get this sense that they would be okay if we all just were in like a sack.
What?
Like we all just wore a plain sack. What do you mean? Not like in a...
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. You're saying that really concern with masculine or feminine presentation, no matter who's doing it, is reifying this thing called gender, like trafficking in gender, and we need to abolish it.
Right.
And so when a masculine or feminine presentation is really important to somebody, they are reifying something that some radical feminists think needs to be destroyed.
Yes. You nailed
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Beautifully put. Yeah.
So I see this play out probably because I'm more involved in the lesbian elements.
Mm-hmm.
Has this been like a warfare that's been ongoing within?
Well, again, I don't think I just don't think that these feminist groups have very much power. I think it often takes, if you think about some early radical feminists arguing actually that that the sex-based differences between men and women aren't that great, and they're arguing that to advance their goal of having power over their own lives. So in a way, those ideas, some of those ideas come from a tiny radical wing of feminism. However, nobody listened to them. It's only when autogynephiles advanced those arguments that they started to in the 21st century, that those ideas made any headway. And when they advanced those ideas, it was really so that you couldn't be denied all the things that you were denied as a woman, whether it was being able to open a bank account as a single woman, or being able to say that your husband raped you, because if you were married, it wasn't rape. I mean, there was so much sex-based discrimination. And so that was one avenue of, if there's not a thing called a woman, then they can't oppress us.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't go anywhere. That wasn't part of the legislation or the movement that happened in the 70s. As far as
okay, Cori has editorial comment face on.
I also I feel like I might get punched.
All right.
Slightly.
Well,
all right.
Why would I punch you?
I don't know.
And I'm in the middle. Can we not start throwing punches?
Okay, I guess when it's Strange Bedfellows, you have a pillow fight.
Okay.
Yes.
Only for paid subscribers.
Oh. No, that's our
OnlyFans channel.
First of all, I think that this is a very interesting topic.
Okay.
Which maybe deserves its entire
own episode.
Own episode.
Okay.
Secondly, ideas, like when new ideas are propagated, those ideas change how we think about things. They affect how we model situations, and those ideas change our behaviors. So when we have these conversations about whether groups have power or don't have power, I hate that whole framing, because if you're able to successfully introduce an idea that people take up,
you have power.
well, you don't have power, but there's change anyway.
Yeah.
The change happens. You might not have any of the power. It might go running completely out of control and burn up the entire part of the city. You might not have any power at all, but the change happens.
But I guess what that's a very good point. And what I'm saying, I don't think it was there, even though they might have had those ideas 50 years ago. I don't think they're the ones that got them. I don't think they got, I think they got institutionalized in spite of the women, not because of them. But well, I guess I can't prove that. So,
well, at the risk of saying, here's a brilliant insight, let's not talk about it. I know that's dangerous, but one of the debates that I've been having on the Twitters lately, or on X, sorry, I didn't mean to dead name it, is revolves around this concept of, are we dealing with a power analysis here, whereby one group takes power and oppresses the other group with it, which is sort of part of the camp that the Jennifer Bialik proposes, that there's all the an exclusive group of rich men that are pushing transgenderism into the world, versus this other idea is it some sort of mass movement where these ideas have propagated and spread, and now there's this emergent phenomenon where people are without any sort of coordination putting these ideas into the public sphere, right? These are two different theories. In my opinion, both of them can have some amount of truth to them, but I don't think that there's one that is clearly the genesis of the current movement. I think it's a combination of both of these things. And we've seen in the past 2024, you can throw $1 billion at a problem, still come up $20 million short, and not solve the problem. So you can pour money, dollar after dollar after dollar, into something, and it might not go anywhere. So there has to be some sort of uptake by the public, some acceptance of it for money to convert into power. The idea has to be catchy. So let's not talk about this.
Okay, let's not talk about it. But if anyone has $1 billion they want to pour into something, I will send you some brownstone listings in my neighborhood.
Can we talk about it at some point, though?
Yeah, no, we ought to talk about it a little bit. That's selfish for me to throw that out there and then say that we shouldn't talk about it.
I think on one hand, we're saying these are the strange bedfellows with whom we want to be in the bed with, or that we found ourselves in the bed with, but we're all agreeing. Okay, am I not doing this?
No, I don't understand what you mean.
Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. We're in bed with some Christian conservatives, but we are in the same bed because we agree on the same. We want the same thing.
Yeah, we want to defeat the gender identity ideology.
Right. But then I found myself in this strange bed, and I'm here with these Christian. You're going to be the Christian conservatives.
Oh yeah.
Okay? You're going to be the Christian conservatives, and you're going to be the turfy feminists.
Can we switch that?
Okay, you get to be the turfy feminists and the ultras, because now I've learned this term.
What's an ultra?
You're the ultras and the turfsies, and then you're the Christian conservatives. And I thought we were in the bed because we all had the same goal, right? Mm-hmm. But because I thought we had the same goal, I thought we could all get along about the same goal. And the longer I'm in this, I'm realizing maybe your side wants me around more than your side does. And maybe there really is more rifts and they're deeper than And maybe we don't have the same goal. I don't know.
I guess this could lead then to this moral purity question, because I used to think that the word bipartisan was something we were supposed to aspire to. Yeah. And that was good. It was good when people came together. And now that's seen as you've compromised yourself morally. And I also thought in the beginning, I thought, wow, I went down to this rabbit hole and there are really interesting people here.
And we all like each other and we're kumbayaing.
Well, for a while, and then it got really crowded. And then there's that discussion of good crazy versus bad crazy, which is I don't know how many people were going to offend this episode, but that has come up a little bit of like people. There is more and more sort of drama, which I try not to be part of, but people are kind of losing their minds, I think, more and more. And I'll just finish my thought, which is, I think the people that lose their minds are the people who demand moral purity. So there are some kind of turfy types on Twitter who occasionally, I'm not doing a lot of social media these days, but I would just log on sometimes and just find that certain kind of hardcore turfy lesbians, or not even lesbians, just women, would be furious at me. I hadn't even written anything, or I just would show up digitally, and because I will talk to, commune with, work with transsexuals, that I had to be destroyed. And I just thought, how does it get us to any kind of goal if you're picking off all of the people who have a slightly different tactic than you do? That's what the left is doing. It's the left eats itself. Why would this movement do it too? And the other thing is that it is my job to talk to as many people from as many different perspectives as possible. And even when I was a fiction writer, my first novel, which I wrote when I was 29, was about a 59-year-old bigot, womanizing Catholic ex-con who I loved very much. So I'm very, very interested in the universality of shame and the human emotions that bring us together. And I'm interested in people with different belief systems. And I consider that to be one of my few character attributes. So when someone is attacking me for that, I'm just kind of, I don't really care. I'm getting thicker skinned as the years go by, but it was just bizarre to me.
Tell me about it.
Wait, I am interacting with people you consider to be impure, and therefore I am impure, and therefore I need to be discarded. How would that ever? Wasn't the strange bedfellow part of it the beautiful part of it? To me, that's been the beautiful part of it.
Yeah, I
all the Christian conservatives who have told me that they're praying for me, I love it. I accept your prayers, especially if they're about a real estate. Prayers. No,
no. I mean, I've had some strange DM interactions where people would come into my DMs and say, like, with my ex, would say, like, "Don't you know your ex is really a female?" And I'd be like, "Yep." And are we talking about this? Like, what? I don't understand. And then it would just keep going on as if we're fighting. And I'm like, why are we fighting? Like, and then half the time I would be saying, do we agree on the same outlook on pediatric gender transitions? We do. Oh, okay. So then why are you being mean to me and like coming into my DMs and screaming at me?
Like, yeah, it's, do we have to agree about everything?
There's still daylight. We need to close it.
Well, it's like coming into my strange bedfellow's bed and then wanting to light it on fire. Like, well, find your own bed then. Don't light mine on fire.
Bus is on fire.
Everything is on fire. Everything is on fire.
So I don't know how far left the three of you identify.
Oh God.
I don't know anymore.
I was so far left that, I mean, like
I know you're an anarchist.
like hardcore anarchist.
Yeah.
Like burn it all down.
I've never been that way.
Oh, she's got.
I got the
Yeah, she's really got it.
You've got the art.
I've got the tattoo to prove it. Yeah. And I got this after George W. Bush was inaugurated, and I came here to a huge demonstration.
Yeah, he still hasn't gotten over it.
I know. He was so sad that I was
him.
here. I know. So I had to go get a tattoo about it.
My impression of people on the left is that like the politics and the friendship are like bind you together, so that there's not like, I'm not on the left. I would rather go play board games with my friends. I have a board game.
Mm-hmm.
I have a tennis group.
I want to be
Like
in both those
I have
groups.
like I have activity groups.
You have the Lord of the Rings group.
I have a the Lord of the Rings watch party was awesome. It was fantastic. So much food. But yeah, I do stuff like that. Whereas like on the left, it's really common for people's socializing network to be the same as their political action network. And
Yes.
I wonder if that creates a dynamic so that if you win, now your friends don't have a reason to hang out anymore.
Yes. I think that I think that's very insightful, and there's a lot more overlap. And I think just personally, my experience of having been certainly further on the left than I would now say that I am was that my friendship networks were like that. And I realized that wasn't, as soon as I started to disagree with people, I realized that wasn't a very stable basis for friendship. Mm-hmm. And maybe one of the best things that's come out of this is having a lot of friends who I disagree with about all kinds of things, and it couldn't matter less to that bond. Because I really don't think that was the case before. And it was very, like, I didn't think that was the basis of my friendships when I was in my 20s, for example. But I don't think it was for me, but I found out that it was for other people. And that was very sobering, I guess.
But could you disagree about this stuff? I mean, are you bonded because you disagree about this?
No, I mean,
everything else, because you share a certain reality, which is called reality. I mean,
it turns out sharing a certain sense of reality is really beneficial, but I think if it's possible to be friends with people who disagree about so many other things that are often thought of as hot button issues. Like I have friends who are definitely like strongly pro-life, which I definitely didn't have before. And we can talk about things like, okay, I had an abortion and I can understand where they're coming from. And it seems like it's just different.
Well, that's one of the things I'm saying about when I'm with conservatives, all of the things we disagree with are out in the open. So I'm arriving. It's one of the
maybe
introduce myself that way is like, we don't have very much in common. And then I just feel like actually it helps us sort of lead with our humanity in a way, because we know that we don't share a lot politically. So what else can we, and we listen to each other, and they talk to me about the Bible, and I say, I don't think there's anything you can say that will lead me to believe in God. But again, like I totally accept your prayers, and I think your faith looks really nice, and I wish I could. I always wanted to be a Christian when I was growing up, and I couldn't do it. But I feel like that has been nice, but I don't know how many of those folks are going to be like my friend to the end types.
Your ride or die.
But my ride or dies. But I will say that for a lot of us, and I mean a lot of us in this rabbit hole, finding out that people aren't the friends you thought
Mm-hmm.
they were, and the experience of not seeing the world the way they do in a very, very fundamental way is incredibly painful and upsetting and disruptive, and just it's so hard to move beyond that. But I think Cori is right. You know, I'm that having another activity. I mean, for years it was, you know, where I'm hanging out with people because our kids are on the same sports team.
Yeah.
But what do we talk about? We talk about politics. I mean, here in New York City, you talk about number one is schools, number two is real estate, number three is politics. Those are all terrible topics. So I think at some point in the last, you know, eight years, there was a tipping point, and I could no longer have any discussions about politics at all, because people come to the table assuming we agree, and I just didn't. And I wasn't good. I wasn't professorial in the way that I approach these things of, you know, you tell me. I wasn't Cori enough. Cori's very good at that. And I think I'll just get some private lessons from Cori. But I can't overestimate. I don't know if I'm saying this one. It sucked. It really sucked. It's been really hard. It's been really painful. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And
losing everybody.
I think that, that being the prayers and welcomes of Christian conservatives, I'm never going to be a Christian or a conservative. I've met so many people who have turned into Christians through this movement.
Oh, that's true.
And
it's
there is that too. Yeah.
It's happening. A lot of people are being converted, and I'm very happy for them.
Lisa,
you're baptizing me?
Have you affirmed gender as your savior?
In a weird way. Yes, because I have all of you.
Oh, wow. Look at that dramatic backlight.
Oh, I don't know. I don't have anything else.
Look like
but it's getting dark. What?
Have you affirmed Eliza as your
for those
Virgin
of you
Mary?
listening, Eliza just shifted her lighting because the sun has gone down and now looks like an angel.
Yeah.
And I feel I've changed.
Is that convincing to you, Lisa?
Yeah. I accept Christ as my savior.
Okay.
Well, on that note,
and on that note,
we're done. We just need to baptize you in the hotel shower.
Okay.
Should we dip this?
Yep. You were Jewish at lunch. So this is like
we've accomplished a lot.
It's been a big day. It's been a big day. Let's wrap up because it's been a big day, and let's hear people's non-gender recommendations, something that is enjoyable. That is not gender. Eliza, do you have something to recommend to people to cleanse their soul of gender for the week?
My recommendation is to get an art museum membership, which is something I got for Christmas from my mom, and it's just the best because then you feel like you kind of have to go to the art museum all the time just to make the most of it, and it's always wonderful. And I went to see the I had just not been super productive yesterday, and I went to see the Paula Modersohn Becker show at the Chicago Art Institute and the Thorn miniature rooms, which are like the little diorama, like little dollhouse type things of different houses and churches from mostly Europe and the United States at different times. And it was just the best. So
I love it. I hope if some people take that recommendation that they'll write to us and tell us what museum they've gone to and what they've seen.
Yeah.
Jamie, non-gender recommendation?
Wow, this has been I've been traveling.
It's been a pretty gender week for you guys.
Such a gender week. Yeah, I always fall back on coffee. is my next go-to. So,
is there a particular kind of coffee you can recommend?
well, I am obsessed with drinking flat whites with always extra shots of espresso.
Flat white doesn't sound as appealing as it must be.
Why?
It sounds like a kind of printer paper. And it does.
That's matte white.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is traveling, especially doing a lot of traveling for this. Getting better at packing. I roll all my clothes, trying to bring enough. Yeah, I just
flat whites and roll in your clothes.
Yeah, those are my two.
Cori?
Well, even though I had all this extra time to think about it, like, I'm gonna just say the lamest thing.
Okay.
So whenever it gets cold, when it starts to get like October, November, I've reached that age where I now start like buying additional blankets that I don't need, and I've got like a whole closet full of them now. This year I bought like a little cloak, like heated cloak with a little hood that goes on it too, and it sits on your shoulders instead of on your lap. And
how many snuggies do you have?
How many what?
How many snuggies do you have?
It's not a snuggie.
It's a cloak.
It's not like you put your arms into it and it's like kind of sits on your shoulders.
No, I know, but you're not answering the question.
Oh yeah, how many snuggies?
I have zero. I have zero.
Oh, we know what to get Cori.
What's funny is I have 0 snuggies and 1 dignity.
Wait, this is like a hooded blanket?
It's a hooded electric blanket. Yeah.
It's a hooded electric, but it has a little lithium battery to heat it.
No, it doesn't have a battery. You plug it in.
Oh, you plug it in.
Yeah,
okay.
so you can't. If you're in one spot for a while, it's wonderful.
See, I'm gonna change my recommendation because I have.
You have too many snuggies.
No,
it was gonna be a snuggie.
Even though I didn't do it this week because I was on a plane, but normally on New Year's Day I do the polar dip. And if I had a hooded blanket with a heated, that would be amazing for when you get out / kind of cheating. But I did not do it this year, but I always go for a walk on the beach on my birthday, which is in the winter. And so I'm just going to have to polar dip when I do my winter beach walk, but I highly recommend.
I love polar dips.
The polar dipping.
Totally.
I never thought I could do it because I don't
It's
enjoy
amazing.
being cold or being in cold water, but I very much enjoy, just like writing, I enjoy having done it. I enjoy doing it. Okay,
Right,
so
till next week.
if any of you do those things, please let us know.
Or also, I'd love to hear about your other strange bedfellows.
Oh,
if there's
yeah.
any that kind of haven't touched on or missed.
Tell us the strangest people you've communed with via this issue.
Yeah.
Good thing to talk about. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll be in our own beds next week.